The Curses and the Covenants, a History Weaver Mystery, Book 2, by Connie Worden. Read by the author. Chapter 40. March 24th, 1899. Well, dear diary, what news? Joshua has asked me to marry him. I can't say my reaction was complete and utter shock. There have been indications in our interactions together that gave me to understand his intentions. But I didn't dare to presume until he made himself clear. He is a good, kind, dear man, and I have said yes. To him, and to the adventurous life of a frontier doctor's wife. I believe this is the future God would have for me, that I could not foresee when last I wrote about what my future may hold. He wanted to wait until after Olive was born before he mentioned his wishes to me, as he did not want to cause me any undue excitement before the birth of the baby, either negative or positive. And not being so sure of my answer, he wasn't sure if the excitement would be negative or positive. He is all that is considerate and thoughtful. And Mrs. Lamb is overjoyed. She has been a second mother to me since my coming to them in autumn. And we have only grown closer daily. She was invaluable in my confinement when I was no easy patient. She was the true patient, as she was the only one who was at all patient during that restless time. I've grown to love them both, and I know Joshua will be a good father to Olive, and raise her as his own. Now the hurry and bustle of preparing for the big day, and for the wedding clothes and a trousseau, etc. At least we have all a household outlay between the two of us. I must be sure to return the cradle to my friends in Beaver Row, though Olive is thriving and growing in it for her first week. Joshua says she should have her own, and he is right. He promises to find her the finest cradle Penhurst can boast, and then we will return this cradle to its rightful owners on our next journey to Beaver Row. Part of me will be loath to part with the borrowed cradle, the cradle of the covenant as I think of it. I've come to have mixed emotions towards it. It now holds happy memories as well as sad. And even in the sad ones there was so much growth and discovery and truth planting itself in my mind that I can't regret any of the story the way it came to be written. Tragedy and all. It all strikes me with such depth of emotion as I watch little Olive, now asleep in the little wooden bed, that I believe I shall miss the cradle and its burden of hidden gold. Sarah sighed and rested her chin in her hand. She had a look of resignation on her face. I guess if I'm going to jail for withholding information or whatever they come up with for me not telling anyone about Danny's death, I might as well get it all out there. It's inevitable everyone finds out now. Yes, I came around to your house that evening and no one was home. With you both gone, I realized it would be my only chance to get my hands on that journal. The impulse came over me to see if I could find it, and see if Julia had written anything in it about what I'd told her. So I found your spare key and went on in. I was nervous and in a hurry, but I thought if you came home while I was in there, I could make up some excuse about why I'd come in the house while you were out. Even though I was in a rush, I knew enough to handle the journal with a Kleenex so I didn't leave fingerprints, just in case. I looked through the journal quickly and found that one incriminating page. So I found a pair of scissors and cut it out. I didn't think you'd notice. I was so careful. How did you notice? You weren't that careful. The first thing was that you left the outside light on. Sarah put her hand to her mouth in an expression of dismay. Oh no, that tipped you off? I know how that happened. It was pretty dark by the time I went in. I thought I'd turn on a light just long enough to see in front of me so I could see if there was anything I'd bump into on my way to your room in the basement. I flipped the switch that's right there when you walk in. I don't know your house's light switches very well. I thought it would be the inside light, but no light came on. I guess it was the outside motion detector light, and so it didn't come on. Or I didn't notice it from inside the house. I just thought it was a burnt-out bulb or something. I suppose I was in such a rush I forgot to switch it off. Did you also try to hack into my computer and my social medias? I didn't get into your computer. I didn't have enough time for that one. You really should have a harder password for your other accounts. Once I guessed your password for one of them, I had it for all of them. I hope you've got better passwords now." "Yes, thank you, all fixed. Did you find anything interesting?" "No, I thought you might have some information in your email account. Emails about Julia from her parents or something. I was just paranoid to know what all she'd told you. About me, I mean. I was panicking. But your accounts are very boring. You really should give some more time to them. You should make them more exciting and user-friendly and artsy, seeing that's what you use for marketing your writing. I could help you. Danny wasn't the only one good at computers in the family." "Thanks for the offer," I said, wryly. The conversation was taking a strange turn. Or not. The old bossy Sarah was back from the brink of the dungeon of despair to try to run my life again. "There's so much I'm still so curious about," I said to her. "The cradle, the one in the picture with Julia, the night that Danny took her to the hotel. Where did he get that?" Sarah took stock for a long moment. "Okay, there's another whole part to the story that involves someone else," she said. "If I'm coming clean, I guess I may as well make a thorough job of it." "Who's the someone else?" I prompted her. "Joe Delway." "Okay, I'm listening." "Well, I'm embarrassed of this now, so I didn't tell anyone, but we ended up in a relationship. Briefly, very briefly, the summer that Danny moved up to Penhurst and worked with Joe and moved in with him and Phil Vikerts." She paused. Too long for my impatience. "And?" "Well, it was never going to work out. He wasn't serious about me, and he was too crazy for me. Part of his appeal was his bad boy image. But when I started to figure out that it was a lot more than just image, I knew I didn't want to be with him. But I always had a soft spot for him anyway. We stayed sort of friends since then. Up until he went to prison. I'm done with all that now. Who needs friends like that? But you probably know about him stealing that cradle artifact from the collector?" "Yeah, my writing club girls told me something about that. I think it was probably the same one that our great-great-grandma used for her babies at one time. Just my suspicion, anyway. I don't know how many wooden cradle artifacts kicking around this area that there could be." "Well, you're probably right, Ange. And it wasn't Danny who told Joe about the cradle from the diary. It was me. We got talking about gold mines in the area one time, and I'd just read that old diary, and I let Joe borrow it and read it. Wasn't long after that I saw the news report about that old wooden cradle being stolen from the collector's home. I was pretty sure Joe must have been responsible, because he started to get fascinated with the cradle and the diary. I think Larry was probably right that it was the mention of the gold hidden in the cradle that made Joe steal it. I don't know why he didn't get in trouble for it then. I don't know how that story ended." "Well, he didn't get in trouble because his half-brother got charged for the theft. They couldn't prove he stole it, though, and I guess the case was dropped. Also coming from my writing club girls," I told Sarah. "Anyway, I didn't know all that, but I did show Julia her baby pictures that I had on my phone, and I let her borrow great-great-grandma's diary. She must have realized the cradle in the picture was the same one that was written about in the diary. As to how Danny got his hands on it, I learned about that the night he came to say goodbye for the last time. He'd read that old diary, too. He was still hanging out with Joe sometimes. I guess Joe said something to him about taking it, and that made Danny mad. He never wanted to hurt anyone, except, of course, he hurt us a lot with his choices. That wasn't his intention, but he did. Anyway, he had a strong moral code in his way. He had a lot of respect for the culture the cradle belonged to. So he stole the cradle from Joe, intending to get it back to its owner somehow. But then he still had it when he took Julia that night, and he used it for her, because he didn't have anything else for her to sleep in. Anyway, he told me it was still in the car, and could I return it somehow? He wanted me to know he hadn't stolen it, at least not from the rightful owner, just from the guy who stole it in the first place. Of course, he did steal his own baby, so I guess he wasn't against all stealing. Although he didn't see it that way, that he'd stolen her, I mean. He didn't see why he didn't have an equal right to her, when he was the one who wanted her the most anyway. Sarah's story broke off into silent sobbing. I awkwardly stroked her back and let her cry without saying anything. When she was composed again, she went on. When Danny died that night, I didn't think about the cradle again. I had other things on my mind. I'm guessing that Joe came and found it in the car and took it again. He might have been keeping an eye on Danny, looking for an opportunity to get the cradle back. The car wouldn't have been locked. Maybe Joe even came that night when I was away following Danny. Anyway, that's all I really know about what Danny was doing with the cradle and what became of it. I guess after she read that old diary and saw the pictures, Julia decided Danny had brought a curse on her by laying her in the cursed cradle that one night. I think it was a different kind of curse he passed on to her, though. I'm afraid they were both doomed. Mental illness is about the worst curse I can imagine, she spat out between gritted teeth. I didn't want to seem heartless and press Sarah when she was in obvious distress, but not every mystery was cleared up to my satisfaction. Okay, one last thing I have to know. Locking me in the boathouse. Was that you, too? Sarah's face looked blank. What boathouse? With a sense of shock, my former suspicions of Larry came flooding back. You didn't tie a rope on the door of the boathouse at Minor Lake Campground to trap me in there? No, she said indignantly. Then she burst out laughing. Psych. Yes, I did. Had you wondering there for a minute, though, didn't I? Sarah, why? That wasn't funny. That was genuinely scary. Were you even going to let me out? Yeah, of course. I mean, I knew Larry would when he got there. I saw the note on your desk and fixed up that little plan. I parked my car out behind some bushes where I knew you wouldn't see it, and waited till I saw you go into the boathouse. Then I tied the door closed on you. But why? Just as a joke? Oh boy, where do I even start with this one? She said. You can start by explaining why you locked me in. Yeah, but it's a complicated story. As though the rest of it hadn't been complicated enough already. Okay, Sarah said after collecting her thoughts for a minute. That started off with Joe Dalloway, too. But he was in prison then. I know he didn't have anything to do with locking me in the boathouse. Well, no, not directly, but you remember those 7 sacred objects that Evangel wrote about in her diary? Yeah, I have no idea what they'd have to do with you locking me in the boathouse, though. Just wait, I'm getting there. So Joe got a hold of me one day in summertime. I told you we were still off and on friends. Anyway, he called me, and he sounded nervous, excited, over the phone. He said he needed some information from me. And what did I remember from the diary about those 7 sacred objects? I told him I'd only tell him if he let me in on why he was asking. He said it'd be easier to show me than explain, and he'd pick me up that afternoon. When he came around, he was with Phil Vikerts and Phil's 4x4. We drove to Beaver Row and out into the woods by the old cherry barn, and out close to the old stone bridge. I was starting to panic because I wondered if it had anything to do with where I'd buried Danny. I'd never told Joe about what I'd done, but I wondered if he knew somehow. They didn't pay any attention to the stone mound, but they showed me the entrance to the old mine that Evangel wrote about in her diary, the one that caved in and killed our great-great-grandpa. Yeah, got it. I know the one. I know it from the diary, I put in. Where was Sarah going with this? How did her going out to see the old mine turn into locking me in a boathouse? Anyway, we went in the mine. When Joe found the entrance somehow one day this past summer, he'd remembered something from the diary about Evangel thinking that the 7 sacred objects might have been hidden in it. The guys, Joe and Phil, had dug through some of the caved-in part to see what was on the other side of the cave-in, and they could see through the hole they'd made that there were the sacred objects on the other side in a little sort of room. They hadn't wanted to disturb the earth too much in case it was still unstable, and they set off another cave-in, but they thought I might just be small enough to wriggle through the hole they'd made. I was dying to see what was in that room, so they helped me get through the hole, and I got to see those pieces in real life. I looked down at Sarah's tiny feet. Hadn't my writing club girls mentioned something about a small footprint they'd seen in the old mine that had been an unsolved mystery for them? At least one more piece was falling into place. The footprint had been Sarah's. The mystery I really wanted to hear about, however, was why my cousin had decided it was a good idea to scare the life out of me by locking me in a boathouse. I waited impatiently for her to go on.